Oh, the lore. You guys and your lore, you know? You're spoiled for the lore. You guys and your non-stop jabbering about the lore. Whoa, the lore. Boobity-boo.
Was that the bite of 87? My whole world is turned upside down. That doesn't make any sense.
Make a lore video, they say. It'll be fun, they say. In researching for another upcoming video, I decided I needed to watch every VTuber lore video that each of the 3 top agencies in the West released. Turns out I had no idea what I was getting into, and so I descended into madness as I watched and rewatched all this lore, just so I could write a 10-minute analysis on VTuber lore. Eventually, I decided that I might as well make another video out of all this lore I just watched, because I really don't want to waste all this useless knowledge I just acquired. Turns out other YouTubers like Realist had the actual lore synopsis covered already. But what about a broad overview of the trends that VTuber lore went through over the years? And so I bring to you an alleged and broad timeline of the official corporate VTuber lore from an American English fan's perspective. Before VTubing was popular in the West, it was mostly a thing in Japan. The early day Japanese VTuber talents tended to only have a character concept rather than lore. It seems that this early generation of talents were free to add lore, but few chose to do so. If they did add to their lore, it was usually in a humorous way and it was rarely taken seriously. The community of these early day era talents often filled out the lack of lore with memes about the talents' personalities. The concept of each VTuber in the generation would fit into a broad group theme on occasion, but were mostly unrelated to one another. Even to this day, you will see the majority of Japanese VTubers tend to follow this established tradition and take a lighter approach to their lore. This is the era of VTubers I am admittedly the least familiar with because I wasn't a fan of VTubers yet. But from what I could gather from other fans, deep lore, lore videos, and lore-related songs weren't really a common occurrence either. To sum things up, during the early years of VTubing, as long as a talent had a somewhat interesting concept, that was enough for most VTubers and their fans. My personal favorite lore of this era is the joke lore of Inugami Korone.
コーニ様の教えと頭髪を剃り上げよ常に微笑みを絶やさぬこと汝の指を捧げよ他のチャンネルは削除せよなるほどねこれでコーニ好きになれるよってことかなこれね
Wild skits of Kiryu Koko.
今日からお仕事が始まる人が多くなってきて朝ここを生で見られない人も増えてしまうかもね
そうなんです。でもそんな時におすすめなのがこれ飲むタイプの朝ここ吸うタイプの朝ここ決めるタイプの朝ここ
これなら時間がないサラリーマンでも朝ここを逃さないで済むね
すべて短時間で効果があるのがいいですね
And horror lore of Akai Hato, also known as Hachima. "2020 is the beginning of modern English VTuber lore because it is also the beginning of corporate English VTubers themselves. But really, we are talking about the last 4 months of 2020. The majority of 2020 had talents still debuting with fun concepts, but very little lore to go with them. That is, until Hololive Myth took the world by storm. With HoloMyth's debut, a few English VTuber traditions began to be established, such as the teaser trailer, lore videos, lore-related songs, and deep lore about powerful mythical beings. Each HoloMyth talent took extra care to craft us a backstory in a way that the VTuber community hadn't really seen before. while most of the talents of HoloMyth would stick to explaining their backstory via a lore paragraph. During the debut PowerPoint, two talents in particular would break the mold. Takanashi Kiara pioneered the concept of an illustrated VTuber lore video.
Every couple of 100 years, Kiara's lifespan would come to an end, going up in flames, but soon, rising from her own ashes again.
Meanwhile, Mori Calliope used her established character concept as inspiration for her lyrics for a debut song. Overall, HoloMyth seemed to be more invested in their lore than their Japanese predecessors, and would sprinkle their character lore into their streams, which hyped the fans to make more fanworks of them. As a result, I associate Hololive Myth for their amazing fan lore more than their official lore even to this day. Projects like Myth's Bad End by Mazumaro and Detective Diaries by Crash Landing Studios come to mind. Though not technically Hololive EN, I also wanted to mention that during this era, Hololive Indonesia's Kureiti Oli would shake things up with an incredibly unique RPG Maker cutscene lore video that truly encapsulated the essence of her character. It was a very charming but also headache-inducing experience.
Maksudnya apa? Jelaskan! Nona? Ini apa? Kapan ini mengapa? Nona? Mama papa mana? Dewi mana? Nah? Bingung lagi!
Just 2 months after HoloMyth debuted, VShojo was formed. Under VShojo, Silverware would release a lore video that incorporated her mom as the creator of this world and narrator. Iron Mouse would also share her origin story via narration and a few illustrations in her own lore video. Both of these videos share a similar style to that of Takanashi Kiara's, a simple narration of the character's origin story over still images, with the theme of a divine and immortal being deciding to change their lives out of loneliness. This would become a common narrative chosen for English VTubers going forward. Overall, the majority of VTubers in 2020 would continue to stick to short written descriptions of their character. Deep lore was not commonplace until the tail end of the year, and most deep lore was in the form of a paragraph during debut. If a VTuber did produce a lore video, it would usually be monochrome still images, sometimes even drawn by the talents themselves, and would rarely exceed 2 minutes in length. Lore-related songs also began appearing towards the end of 2020, with the popularity of Mori Calliope's first song. Come spring of 2021, and Nijisanji is ready to enter the English VTuber game. Nijisanji would not only follow in Hololive's footsteps with the debut teaser trailer, but would also introduce a new concept: group debut original songs. Starting with Lazulite's Diamond City Lights, every Nijisanji EN wave would receive their own anime opening of sorts for them to sing as a group. Though these group songs aren't too lore expanding, they did set a tradition for group branding and theming that would go on to later impact the future Nijisanji waves and their lore. Pomu Rainpuff of Lazulites would be the only one of her wave to release a lore video introduction to her debut. Unlike the other lore videos of the time, Pomu would have a purposefully simple and scuffed lore video, oozing with her own comedy style and personality.
Hi there, this is me, Pomu Rainpuff. I'm a fairy living in Neverland. Woo! Recently, many people have stopped believing in fairies. Can you believe this? I even had to get a full-time job as a fairy, OL. I'm losing so much energy because of this, and my magic powers are draining. It's a bad thing. So I thought, what can I do to make more people believe in fairies? So I did a lot of research. I mean a lot of research. Maybe too much research.
Pomu's lore video would open a genre I personally dubbed the comedy lore video. That would be explored by a few future Niji EN talents such as Shu Yamino.
Hey baby, it's me, Shu Yamino. Hey baby, I just learned how to walk. Hey.
Mr. Rios.
Are you even listening to me? Whoa, 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 whoa.
And Millie Parfait.
This parfait is so good! I never had anything like this in my whole life. What is this? Can I have more?
Sorry, Glawi. I don't have any more.
But uh-oh, looks like Nijisanji English has decided to start releasing talents every 2 months, each with increasingly high-quality lore videos than the last. With their many VTuber Wave debuts, Nijisanji begins to hone their formula for group branding and lore. Nijisanji shows us that each wave has a counterpart character concept that will debut after them. Lazulites and Obsidia, Light vs Darkness, Etheria, Heaven vs Heck, Luxium and Noctix, Past vs Future, and so on. As I mentioned, VTuber groups often had loose themes that tied them together, but rarely had concepts that coincided with one another this closely. With every wave, Nijisanji would increase the similarity of each wave member's concepts to match with the rest of the group. After all, a penguin, a dragon racer, and a rose have less in common with one another than 8 guys from different timelines, all getting sucked through a magical portal to Nijisanji HQ. 2021 was when the English fans of VTubers began to see the main difference between the strategies of Hololive and Nijisanji when it comes to debuting VTuber talents. A whole 10 months after the debut of Hololive Myth, we would see the debut of Hololive's Iris. Iris would kick off her debut with a gorgeously animated music video that gave the audience a peek into her background without going into the realm of deep lore. Then she would reveal her deep lore through her debut paragraph. Just 1 month later, the next generation of Hololive English talents, Holo Council, would debut. Council would release one voice-acted lore video to represent the entire generation, and read their individual lore to the audience upon debut.
Space. Exploded into existence, everywhere, all at once. Gravity bound matter together to create the planets and galaxies. Stars formed and illuminated the cosmos. This is the universe. I don't know what I'm doing. It was all by accident. That's what the universe is, Sana. Just one huge mistake. Ah! Mosquitoes, cats the movie, sloppy cereal, lukewarm tea, people who don't flush the toilet, Gary's dream. All of it! A mistake! Worst of all, those things on that blue rock. They don't think the universe is beautiful at all. It's a god miracle you're all here, yet this is all you have to say, you selfish. Why are they holding me responsible? Why are they judging me? The universe has no idea what it's doing. All this pressure is not fair! Sana, put this on. Whoa!
Even if they seemed behind the times compared to Nijisanji, Hololive as a whole would trend towards including more debut lore than before, even in their Indonesian and Japanese branches. Kayla Kowalskia of Hololive Indonesia Generation 3 would give us a beautifully illustrated lore video. Holux of Hololive Japan and Holostar's Uproar would also receive more in-depth group lore than any Hololive Japan generation before them. Towards Christmas time of 2021, Mori Calliope would partner with Merryweather Media to work on a light-hearted Christmas special including her and her gen mates. This seems to be the first time Merryweather Comics worked with a major VTuber on a story. That's important later, trust me. Meanwhile, VShojo did not recruit any more talents during this era, and weren't really focusing on the lore much either. Zentreya released a lore video, and Silverveil would produce 2 more lore videos that year. One lore video was released on Silverveil's channel and showed Silverveil's feelings toward her audience. The second lore video would be on Konzetsu's channel and served as his origin story as Silverveil's brother. I believe the sibling channel crossover lore would serve as inspiration for future multiverse projects to come for VShojo. That year, Iron Mouse would also read the lore of Booby out loud on stream in front of Connor.
I wrote, he's a regal...
That's me.
Regal tsundere,
Not me.
but has a tendency to sometimes be sweet and is an older brother / butler type.
Do I have a tendency to be sweet?
No.
Maybe we can cut that. Maybe we can cut the sweet part. But yeah, sounds good.
But that's really it for VShojo. In 2021, you can see a positive attitude shift towards VTuber lore begin to occur. More fans gained interest in lore as VTubers and their teams put more and more effort into their backstory. More of the budget of debuting a new talent was put towards the lore of a VTuber as agencies started to recognize their appeal. I honestly love how individualistic VTuber lore of 2021 could be when it was written by the talents themselves. We have now entered the present day trends for VTuber lore from when this video comes out. VTuber lore in 2022 is characterized by group world building and long, high production lore videos with a more serious tone. The intention of lore videos in VTuber agencies has now been solidified to craft an entire anime world that the characters debuting in the group belong to, for a more immersive branding of every generation. Since this is the current day version of the lore strategies of each company, I'll be spending a little more time on each lore release. As Nijisanji debuted wave after wave, HoloEN remained pretty quiet after the debut of Council. Then after a significant period of silence from the EN branch, Cover would go on to announce HoloTempest, the first English generation of male talents under the HoloStars brand, who would debut in 2 waves 6 months apart from one another. This time, the approach for pre-debut marketing from these generations changed significantly from Cover Corp's previous generations. Just look at the difference between the HoloMyth trailer and the HoloTempest trailers. HoloMyth's trailer introduces the characters only, whereas HoloTempest's trailer first takes time to introduce the worlds that their characters will inhabit, then shows their characters interacting with the world. Cover Corp also released a mini manga for HoloTempest before debut. This mini manga marketing method was also taken by Holostar JP's Uproar, who debuted in March 2022. Actually, the difference between the mini mangas released for Uproar of Holostars Japan and Tempest of Holostars English showcases Cover Corporation's 2 different approaches to VTuber lore in the modern day. So please allow me this quick tangent. The Uproar manga, released with the Japanese audience in mind, focuses on a comedic slice of life scenario about Cover Corporation manager Daido Shinobe being sent out by CEO Yago himself to find the next generation of Holostar idols. Despite containing some fantastical characters like a spirit tracker, a phantom thief, a black market mangaka, and a ghost, the manga overall remains quite grounded because the stakes are low and the settings are real-life locations like the Cover Corp building and cafe. Uproar's manga focuses on being more comedic than serious. HoloTempest's mini manga, released for the English audience in mind, on the other hand, has a fantasy action feel to it. Our story starts off by tying the lore of Holo Council in with HoloTempest, with the inclusion of the character Omega Alpha. The manga then follows our hero Regis Altair as he recruits an elite alchemist, a scholar who is totally not a vampire, and a gladiator into his guild in order to save the world of Elysium from a terrible fate. The tone of the manga is much more action-packed with intense angles and expressions, and the stakes of the story are high. As a result, this character introduction manga feels a lot less grounded in reality, but establishes its own fantasy world for these VTubers to live in instead. Throughout the Tempest manga, the focus remains on framing the characters as cool and powerful, rather than the more down-to-earth relatable characterization of the Holostars Uproar manga. In short, Cover Corp has established 2 different approaches to lore for their talents to cater to different audiences. The Japanese side of Cover Corp talents continue to release more slice-of-life content, such as their series Holo no Graffiti. If anything does stray from the slice-of-life norm like Holo Error, it's usually a spin-off story and not technically canon to the official VTuber lore for their JP talents. Meanwhile, the English side of Cover Corp tends to release lore that focuses on amazing and powerful beings in fantastical situations. As a whole, I believe that the Japanese side of VTuber storytelling is focused more on drawing audiences in through relatability, and the English side is focused on drawing audiences in through a cool narrative and a spectacle. In addition to this new approach to marketing on the English side, Cover Corp also had both generations of HoloTempest sing an original song together. With the two-wave system, the debut songs, and the in-depth lore, I feel like the HoloStars team may have been trying to emulate Nijisanji's recent debut style just a bit. Even if the marketing team for HoloTempest was inspired by Nijisanji, I still consider HoloTempest's world building to be quite fun on its own. Other than that, in 2022, Hololive would also release group songs for HoloMyth, HoloCouncil, and a full origin story animation for Gargura. That's gorgeous to look at and reminds me of the anime Squid Girl. Calliope Mori would never stop producing songs that fall in line with her persona. But one of her 2022 releases in particular, titled Nezumi Scheme, would showcase her origin story from Reaper to Rapper in all her self-animated glory. I'm glad to see their previous generations of HoloEN getting in on the fun of lore videos and group lore too. In 2022, Nijisanji perfected their group branding formula with the debuts of Illuna and XLA. With the announcement of Illuna came the typical debut trailer and group cover, but also the first co-ed generation of talents the ENVTuber scene had ever seen. The character designs also all sported a variation of the same plaid bottoms and white tops to act as a school uniform of sorts, adding to the feeling of coordinated group marketing that Nijisanji seems to excel at. Despite all writing their own lore, Illuna members were able to coordinate their backstories extremely well. Each member has a backstory that goes from a hopeless situation to one of hope through becoming a member of the Illuna friend group at the same school. Not only that, but the lore videos out of Illuna showed incredibly high production value on average, sometimes even being fully animated. The counterpart generation to Illuna XLA would once again showcase Nijisanji's prowess in group branding with the same incorporation of plaid bottoms and black tops as a school uniform. To take the group branding further, Nijisanji would hire our familiar friend, Merryweather of Merryweather Media, to write XLA's lore. Mary would aid the talents of XLA in taking the same approach to their lore videos that Illuna did, writing their origin story as a group of friends, but this time imbuing the Merryweather comics' signature writing style of dramatic and fantastical situations within each video. As a result, XLA's lore is consistent across the board, and members are more involved with each other's backstories than any previous VTuber generation. Reminiscent of the Marvel Universe, XLA is essentially all a group of superheroes going to school together. From the concept to the design philosophy to the lore execution, the current day Nijisanji method comes closest to feeling like their waves are all characters that come from the same anime. In January of 2022, Natasha Nyanners of VShojo partnered with Merryweather Media on what would become the first episode of the VShojo Mythos, which now has its own IMDb page apparently, like it's its own anime. The VShojo Mythos is an interconnected episodic story that weaves in each VShojo member into an epic story about heaven and heck, chaos and nature, and gods and the fate of humanity, and also explains how all these fantastical beings came to stream at VShojo. The entirety of the VShojo Mythos has been directed by Merryweather Media, and Mary is even considered the official writer of VShojo. The episodes are a mix of the talent's own self-written origin stories and newly written origin stories provided by Mary. It also contained some fun Easter eggs from VTubers from other agencies, and has even been known to tease new upcoming members in VShojo within some of the episodes before those talents have even been announced by the company. In 2022, VShojo pumped out lore video after lore video with substantial length, voice acting, and production value. Another fun way VShojo utilized lore in 2022 was with the lore videos that they showed at VShojo Next. The first lore video shown at the panel, also done by Merryweather Media by the way, opens to a scene of the current VShojo members at Anime Expo themselves, waiting to welcome their newest member. I love the start of this video because it bridges the gap between the physical location of Anime Expo that this was taking place at and the animated story we are about to see unfold. This promised new member is revealed to be the esteemed indie VTuber herself, Kei-san. Kei-san's backstory was equal parts comedic and heartwarming, and fit her online persona perfectly. Months after the VShojo panel, another popular indie VTuber, Haruka Caribou, would join VShojo, and her lore would be tied into the VShojo Mythos as the beginning of life itself, and enemy to Nyanner's chaos entity. However, this wasn't Haruka's first time making a lore video. Haruka's indie lore video was an incredibly touching story that paralleled her real-life experiences growing up with autism and discovering VTubers.
She discovered something she had never seen before, VTubers. She hadn't laughed in such a long time. Their humor, quirkiness, and how unique they all were had struck a chord within her. This looks so fun. Can I try this? Wait, won't people think I'm weird for being me? However, she noticed everyone in their chat, laughing along and accepting them for who they were. She gathers up the courage to try again. On this special day is when her life changed for the better.
It remained much more grounded than her role in the VShojo Mythos, and is definitely worth a watch. Still, I'm glad to see Haruka Caribou being incorporated into the VShojo Mythos nonetheless, because it really helps her fit in with her new peers. In the present day, English VTuber lore has evolved significantly from 2019. Every VTuber company is focused on stepping up the production quality and hype with every new generation of talents they release. While VTuber lore started as an optional thing for talents to create, lore videos have become a staple for every generation of corporate VTubers to have. For Hololive and especially Nijisanji, group lore has gradually become more and more cohesive, as even the concepts and visual designs for characters have become more and more coordinated. And with that, we have covered every major VTuber agency lore that I could find for this video. After looking back on it, I can finally present to you a very broad overview of how Agency VTuber lore has evolved over the years. So, before 2020, Agency VTubers would debut with their own individual concepts, rather than a clear theme that the entire generation followed. Apart from their individual concepts, actual official lore was scarce. It was up to the talent and their community to fill in the blanks, often with memes and joke lore. English VTubers came onto the scene towards the end of 2020 and popularized debut trailers, in-depth lore paragraphs, lore videos, and lore songs. In 2021, we see a honing of these concepts that were introduced in 2020 and a shift in attitude regarding the importance of VTuber lore. Nijisanji is quicker to adopt VTuber lore practices as the company debuts more talents than Hololive and VShojo combined. The character trailers begin to showcase some of the lore to hype the audience up before debut. It becomes a tradition to release an illustrated and voice-acted lore video that is up to the individual to produce. Often these lore videos give us insight on the individual talent, while also interlocking with the rest of the group's lore. If the debuting VTuber is musically inclined, they may also produce a song with lyrics that fit into their lore. During this year, the character concepts start to sacrifice some of their individuality in order to achieve a more cohesive group identity to give each debuting generation the feel as if they all belong in the same universe. By 2022 and the beginning of 2023, a deep and well-produced lore video has become an absolute staple to any agency VTuber's debut or model reveal. In addition, group song releases for every generation become an integral part of debut week. Individual talent-written lore takes a back seat to professional writers working with the talents to produce high-production lore videos with an entire team of producers, illustrators, and composers. This is of course still in addition to individual talent-written lore paragraphs and lore songs. After the success of Merryweather Media writing for VShojo, their large-scale action-packed writing style would begin to dominate the popular style for VTuber lore. I noticed even if Merry didn't write a VTuber's lore, you can often see his influential style emulated in each video. As it currently stands in the corporate scene, low effort and joke lore has mostly fallen out of favor for high-production lore videos on the English side. This isn't necessarily a bad thing by any means. It's only natural that as VTuber corporations become more successful, they'll lean towards more polished and higher budget productions. Having intricate group lore that crafts a world for fans to explore further through their own fan works is a genius approach for a company to take. This might just be because I binged entire days worth of VTuber lore, but I feel like with all three major VTuber agencies leaning into an increasingly similar style of lore for their English talents, I'm personally waiting for some fresh new ideas to come out of some creative VTubers. The prevailing type of VTuber storytelling isn't bad by any means, but it does bring attention to all the other types of storytelling that VTubers just aren't exploring with their VTuber lore right now. But that discussion will have to wait for another day because I really need to get this video out. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next video, where I analyze the importance of VTuber lore and some of the possible avenues VTubers can take with it. So, what do you think of VTuber lore? Do you feel like a backstory is important to a VTuber's brand? Whose VTuber lore is your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, take care, Bat Bunch.